If I asked you nice, Fatty, would you give me a neck rub?
Absolutely not. In fact, I think asking nice would make it worse. So, I like you, but not that much. And also, of course, we're separated by, I think, 675-ish miles. So reaching your neck, at least at this moment, is out of the question.
Oh, that's too bad, because recently I have been in need of a little relief along the cervical spine area. That's the neck. As some of our listeners know, I took a rough fall late last year. I had surgery, about 6 weeks in a neck collar. By early February, I was out of the neck collar, but I have been left with some lingering stiffness.
Well, I can't give you the neck rub. Don't want to give you the neck rub. But instead of that, how about if you grab something from our show sponsor, Floyd's of Leadville? I'm going to say one of the balms ought to help out.
And I'm going to say you're right. As much as I want the neck rub, you're probably right here. In fact, I have been using some of Floyd's comforting rubs. I like that warming blend. It has a nice blend of menthol, camphor, arnica, and a bit of a surprise here, cinnamon. Oh, who would have thought? But the secret sauce, of course, is the CBD. That's what separates Floyd's from the other rubs. In the case of the warming blend, the CBD is full spectrum, which means it has all the CBD compounds that is available when they are extracted. So when my neck gets sore, instead of calling on Fatty, I call on Floyd's to get a little relief and get things feeling right again.
Yeah, I am a huge fan of the warming balm as well, but for a different reason. I'm using it right now as a warm-up to my warm-up for my training rides. I know I'm a little bit of a weird corner case here, but as a 54-year-old guy training on a single speed, you kind of go from 0 to 7 effort-wise out the driveway. And it is really nice to have your muscles loosened up before you go, not to mention the way the CBD helps you stay in front of the inflammation from hard efforts.
Yeah, so whether it's a cranky neck or sore legs, Floyd's rubs are terrific, a terrific way to ease that pain. Be sure to check out Floyd's of Leadville, our presenting sponsor, for 2 seasons in a row now at floydsofleadville.com, and use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount on all your orders.
And a big thanks to Floyd's of Leadville for sponsoring the show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race, presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is season 3, episode 4 of the show that breaks down, builds you up, gets you ready, freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Hotton, but just about everyone around these parts calls me Hottie.
Is there anyone who doesn't call you Hottie is my question.
Yeah, my folks don't call me Hottie.
Okay. So I am Eldon Nelson, and I am better known as Fatty. I'm trying to think now, is there anyone who doesn't call me Fatty? Well, no one in the house calls me Fatty, and that's everyone in my circle of influence right now. So our topic this week is topical. Hottie, with the social distancing that is such a big part of everyone's lives right now, it's forced many of us to turn to indoor training to get ready for Leadville. So we thought it would be a good time to get together with our friend and Leadville training consultant, Jonathan Lee of TrainerRoad. And he is going to talk with us about how to do that indoor training right. We're going to talk about pressing forward in the pain cave in spite of the uncertainty surrounding us.
But before we get to Jonathan, let's get to our question of the week.
Yeah. And the question, and I think a lot of our questions going forward, Hottie, it comes from our Leadville podcast Slack workspace. If you use Slack, it is without question the fastest, easiest, most certain way to get a hold of me, because I live in Slack pretty much 14 hours a day because of my day job. So if you want to join the Leadville podcast workspace and join our channels on bikes and components and clothing and tires and nutrition and crewing and qualifiers and weather and tools and everything else, just go to Leadville100podcast.com. I put a big, bold link right there along with all of our subscription links. You'll be over in our Slack workspace in no time. Anyway, on to the question for the week. Bib shorts or regular shorts for Leadville? Hottie, I wanted to keep this short, but the fact is I have probably a whole episode's worth of opinions on this topic. So do you want to go first on this?
All right, I'll try to keep it short. A lot of this comes down to comfort. What do you like? What do you normally ride in? That said, the main value, bibs provide is keeping your chamois snugged up good and close to your skin so it's not sliding around and causing chafing. So for a long day in the saddle, like the LT100, the question isn't maybe so much about whether to wear bibs, but which bibs to wear.
Yeah, and I have some recommendations I want to go into on that. But first, we got to bear in mind that men and women are a little different, right? And there is a men and women issue to address here. For men, I think bibs are a no-brainer because it is still very easy to pee without disrobing. For some women's bibs, however, peeing becomes a problem because first the women have to strip their hydration pack, strip the jersey before they can get their bibs off the top, which is why I think it's worth noting for women that my wife, Lisa, loves her Velaccio bibs. They've got a strategically placed zipper that makes it so she doesn't have to take anything off the top when she needs to take a mid-ride and, importantly, a mid-race pee. And Lisa says the zipper is well placed so it doesn't start rubbing against the small of her back and hurting over the course of a long day or race. And that includes even with a hydration pack on. So even though the hydration pack is pressing against her back, it does not press against the zipper. So women, it might be worth it while it's still early in the season. Check out Velaccio and see if those kind of bibs work for you the way they've been working for my wife, Lisa.
And even though Mrs. Hottie doesn't do the LT100, she also loves those Velaccio bibs.
Does she? I didn't know she liked those.
Oh, yeah, yeah. She's got a pair. In fact, I met some folks from Velaccio, and we discussed that once in a show we did, and made sure that Mrs. Hottie got a pair too. She loves them. The zipper is a magnificent idea. But I think you and I both agree that bibs can help a lot with comfort for a long day in the saddle. You don't have that waistband that kind of binds and the chamois stays in place, but something worth noting is the age of your bibs also contributes to the amount of comfort you'll get from them.
Yeah, it's 100% right. The thing is, a good set of bibs don't visibly age very fast. I have Rafa bibs that are 5-year-olds and still look fine. So while I don't notice that they're old when I see them, the fact is the compression effect weakens over time and the chamois becomes noticeably less comfortable over time. It becomes harder and the cushion is less plush, right? And you don't really notice that because it happens slowly until you put on a new pair of bibs and you go, oh, this is what good bibs feel like. So whatever you go with, and you really do need to try a few different kinds of bibs, you just in the same way you try different saddles. Plan on treating yourself to a new pair of whatever bibs you decide you really love a few weeks before the Leadville 100, and then ride with them just long enough to break them in and ensure that they don't have a weird tag placement or seam that's going to ruin your day. So, Hottie, what are some of your favorite bibs?
Yeah, this is it's tough for me to narrow down. I'm very lucky, Fatty. I can wear just about anything and get along. I've actually, even in the LT100, worn bibs and clothing that have been, just okay. I wouldn't say they're the greatest, most expensive stuff out there, and manage my way through it just fine. That said, I mean, if I could just handpick what I wanted, the Ossos brand is great. I'm not so much a fan of their Lycra, but that chamois is just terrific. Another Swiss brand that probably fewer people know about is one that I get through my team now, or one of the teams I'm on. It's spelled, I can spell it. The pronunciation is a little rough. It's C-U-O-R-E, Coor, I think is the name. It's also Swiss. The Lycra is a little thicker, a little tougher than other brands I've worn, but the chamois is just terrific. Great for long days in the saddle. So I would say those are probably my two go-to at this point. The Swiss brand. So I guess I'm a Swiss Hottie, not a Swiss Miss, but a Swiss Hottie when it comes to bibs.
You point out something that is really truly crucial, and that is the bib is the most important. The chamois is the most important part of your bibs, right? That how that feels, and where the seams are, and whether they start rubbing, where they get sewed in, and whether they fit the way you sit. all of that matters so much. And there is no possible way you can tell from a try-on. So you really do have to just go and try a bunch of them. All of that said, I have 3 current favorite brands of bibs. And I'm going to do a quick rundown of each of them and why. The first one is Rafa. And I have to mention them first because I have probably 5 or 6 pair of Rafa Pro bibs. And I think probably 3 or 4 more of their less expensive. I forget what those are called, but that I bought for using in the trainer. For years, they were the only bibs that I ever bought. I rode them every ride, road or dirt, because I love the way the chamois feels. It's a very thick, cushy chamois, and especially when the bibs are new, that chamois just feels great. And a very nice feature, I will say, of Rafa is their repair program. A couple of years ago, I hit the deck on a road ride. I tore a big hole in some brand new bibs. Rafa is expensive. I felt bad. I sent them back, and for no charge, they repaired and sent those bibs back. There's a patch sewed on the inside, but it's hardly visible, and they've been fantastic ever since. And they haven't unraveled or come apart at the seams or anything like that. The only thing they charged me for was the cost of shipping the bibs to Rafa. So they didn't charge me for that. I just had to pay for shipping to get them to them. So good bibs, good company. Second is Gore. I'm honestly kind of surprised to be putting these guys into my list, but last week, Gore sent me a pair of their C7 long distance bib shorts. And yesterday I took my first long ride in them, about 4 hours of lonely single track, close to home, lots of standing, lots of sitting, lots of transitions. And I loved those bibs. Now, this is one ride's worth of evaluation, but I know what I like. It's a thin chamois, but it's a very comfortable chamois. The seams, I could not feel them anywhere. And these bibs were not especially expensive at $200. I've loved Gore for their technical weather gear forever. Shake dry jackets, like one of my prized possessions. But now I'm super excited to try out more of their traditional cycling gear. And finally, and I think any Leadville racer should take a look at our sponsor, DNA. They have some great gravel bibs. And while they're called gravel bibs, they're great for endurance mountain biking. They're very good bibs, very comfortable, and they have a mind-bogglingly low price, $110. These bibs have a really useful mesh pocket on both side panels, and you can get a couple of gels in each side, a bar, whatever you need. And the pocket is a nice stretchy mesh, so it doesn't feel like you're wearing a heavy, bulky extra layer. And when you're using, those pockets are great. When you're not, they just kind of disappear. And the great thing is, if you're designing your own kit with DNA, you can have DNA do a custom version of those bibs, go with the custom jersey you're building as well.
Yeah, that's one thing a lot of us are caught in. We want to represent our teams, right? When we're at the Leadville Trail 100, I've been in that same boat too, which means you're going to have to wear their bibs, or you should be wearing their bibs. And in the case of DNA, you're going to get outfitted with not only a good look, but a great bib. And if you do have custom gear design, DNA is offering a 10% discount to our listeners. Just go to dnacycling.com and the custom apparel inquiry page, choose other in that section in the Where Did You Hear About Us dropdown, then type Leadville Podcast.
Yep. And if you're interested in buying just a straight up, go with any kit pair of DNA gravel bibs, which is what I have, we'll have a link to that page on our show notes.
And one note here, Fatty, before we put this topic away, while this discussion is focused on Lycra shorts, some mountain bikers might be saying, hey, what about the baggies? All right. Well, we haven't forgotten about you. In a future episode, we'll pick up our discussion on shorts and include an interview with Jeff Curran of 11 Pine Clothing Company. They make a baggie that is designed with races like the LT100 in mind.
Hottie, I was looking on Strava and see that you got your first TrainerRoad ramp test done. How was that? 20 minutes of fun, huh?
Yeah, I did, and I got what I figured. A pretty good drop in fitness. No surprise there, though. The first 2 months of the year, I was in full injury recovery mode, and then the third month came around, and we all went into a way of living we will never forget.
Although we would like to. The disruptions to life have been just crazy, unheard of. But we want this show to be a refuge from that and a place that keeps our eye on the prize, whether that be a 2020 Leadville, a 2021 attempt, or, something in between, some other race you're doing. For many of us, that means adapting our preparation and moving our training rides indoors. So we reached out to somebody who knows both the Leadville 100 and the training it takes to achieve your race day goal. Jonathan Lee of TrainerRoad was one of our regular experts in both season 1 and 2. Now he's back in season 3 here for the rest of this episode, actually. And we're going to be talking with him about achieving and keeping fitness when life goes a little sideways.
And while Jonathan is best known for guiding the message about TrainerRoad, he is also the host of the platform's podcast, Ask a Cycling Coach. He is also a nationally ranked mountain bike racer, and he is a certified USA cycling coach. We kick it off with Jonathan by addressing the elephant in the room and the workarounds to keep things on track.
Jonathan Lee, it is great to have you back on the show. It has been a while since we've talked.
I know. I'm happy to be here. It's been a long time since we, I think, broke down last year's Leadville.
We haven't been on the show together to break down your race, and we're going to do that in a future episode, hopefully very soon. But today we want to talk about something a little bit more topical. And hopefully our listeners aren't getting sick of the whole COVID-19 thing, but it's a question. And there are a lot of scenarios a lot of Leadville racers are having to put up with. And I'm sure that has got to be one of the top questions you guys at TrainerRoad are getting right now too, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it on our podcast for the last 2 weeks at pretty good length, and we still continue to get the same questions because it's definitely something that's affecting a lot of people. So, and also, I think that a lot of it is perspective on this too, just before we get into anything further. I think that perspective is super important. Like you mentioned, this is all affecting us to one degree. And certainly it's much larger than any one of us and our individual plans for sure. But also just perspective with ourselves too. And I think like being patient with ourselves and understanding what we can control and what we can't control. I think that goes a long way with dealing with these adjustments to your training.
Mm-hmm. Fatty, why don't we start it off by doing this with the three of us? Let's all say briefly how we're all continuing to ride, yet keep social distancing in effect. You first, Fatty. Go ahead.
Sure. My ride yesterday would be a good example. I went mountain biking on single track in an area that I know is very rarely ridden, just because not many people know about these trails. And the only two people who were on the ride were Lisa and myself. And while, she and I are, of course, closer than 6 feet apart all the time, it's while we were riding, even then, we sort of practice the extra distancing thing, just in case we do come across other riders that they don't think, hey, cyclists aren't doing the right thing, because we understand that perception is a big part of being a cyclist, right? You don't want to be regarded as being a scofflaw right now. So that's what we've been doing. We've also, Lisa and I have kickers in our basement, and she and I are on the exact same training plan for TrainerRoad. And so we do a lot of our riding in the basement, watching Netflix and doing our workouts at the same time. So it's that's kind of been our strategy. How about you guys?
Jonathan, how about you?
Yeah, so I've been training exclusively indoors since this came out, and in Nevada where we're at, we do have we were pretty early to get into some sort of restrictive measures for movement and everything else like that. But for me, and I gotta admit, man, I'm a homebody anyway. I love I love being home, and even though I host podcasts and all that other stuff, I definitely like just silence and calm and a small group of people. So I have to say, not being naturally extroverted in that degree, it's not been a struggle for me. But for the training side of things, man, it's I've just been doing inside, and we have been working really hard on a feature release, and we'll probably end up talking about this a little later, right, Michael? But definitely we've been working on a feature release that has made it a whole lot more entertaining to be able to ride together inside, motivating, encouraging, supportive, the whole deal. So yeah. So I've been doing all of my stuff inside, entirely distanced.
Yeah, we definitely do want to talk about group workouts. But Hottie, what has your socially distant riding plan been?
Right. So as many of the listeners know, I'm in Los Angeles, big urban area, lots of hype, lots of concern about spread of the coronavirus. I have been on one outdoor ride since mid-March. And that one ride told me this was not a good idea. And furthermore, as we moved along into the outbreak, the social distance, the social pressure to adhere to social distancing amongst the cycling community grew louder. And it's become almost taboo to go out and ride outdoors. I didn't need that kind of pressure. It took me one ride and went, this is a bad idea. Went out, bought a kicker, talked to Jonathan Lee, said, hey, dude, how about some TrainerRoad? He said, sure thing. So now my wife and I, Mrs. Hottie and I, are sharing a kicker indoors. She's on that video game software thing that she likes. But I'm a TR guy. And so we've been riding indoors ever since. We share the pain cave. We take turns out there. And it's been working out great. When you live in LA, indoor trainers they collect a lot of dust around here. Because frankly, if the weather goes bad, we just wait a day and then we ride the next day. We've learned, though, both my wife and I, that, hey, this isn't so bad. We can actually do this. It's fine. And we're getting productive rides, almost every day. Right here, 5 feet away from where I'm recording, or not 5 feet, about 20 feet away from where I'm recording right now in the garage. So it's been working out great.
Right. Yes. Your world has changed in a couple of ways, not just the COVID-19, but also because of the accident that you had and mentioned a little bit last couple of episodes. You had good reason to sort of keep your training in the garage for a while.
Yep.
I am really excited to hear your report of your first ramp test as a guy who's been a faithful TrainerRoad guy for, I don't know, how long have I been doing this now, Jonathan? 5 years?
Maybe 5 or 6. It's been a long time.
5 or 6 years.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm interested to hear, to have Hottie join the crew. But so we, of course, are not the only ones who are finding ourselves having to change our training plans and have other plans being changed for us, right? There's, every Leadville racer has got to be considering a lot of weird possible scenarios now. And Jonathan, of course, you are not a medical professional, and we're not going to ask you to give us medical advice here, but you do hear from a lot of people. You talk about a lot of different scenarios in your shows. So I wanted to run some very likely possibilities by you and see what is the right thing to be doing for racers. So first one, you're worried about COVID-19, and I think that's all of us. And of course, there's a lot we don't know, but it seems like for most illnesses, when you're in a depleted state, you are maybe more susceptible to illnesses. Is that something that you guys have done any research on or have any beta on?
Yeah, we've done no research on that. And it's really tricky because I feel like we're just learning new things about this particular virus all the time. Every day, it seems like, we're getting more, and it's much needed information and getting more information every day. But we haven't seen anything in regards to, how training load, how anything like that could affect something like this. Those sort of things usually take quite a lot of time and a pretty large sample size to come up with. Unfortunately, I wish I was a doctor and I could just tell you all exactly what to do in that regard on that specific one. When it comes to adjusting your training, that's definitely where we have some insight, though, for sure.
Yeah. Now, you are a smart guy and you are someone who trains hard for races. Have you adjusted your training just with the concerns about COVID-19? Yeah,
so other than just making sure that I'm training inside and not riding with others, that sort of thing, in terms of how I've adjusted my training, I think there's a couple scenarios you could have. Number one, your event, you don't know if it's been canceled or not, or will be canceled or not, right? And that's basically, I think a lot of us listening to this for Leadville. We don't know. We hope that this whole thing gets solved, or at least gets progresses to the point where all of us can start to help and see these numbers go down and safely have things like events again. And we hope that's the case, but we just simply don't know. I don't know that national championships, my main goal in July, I don't know that is going to be held or not. So I'm actually just pushing forward with my training as normal. So basically I still act like that event is going to happen. And even if that event gets canceled, I might still act like it's going to happen just to bring myself to peak fitness for fun. And then hopefully see some great numbers and get some good power PRs out of it. And then I'll just reset and build towards something else. But to me, I kind of break it down to a couple things. Basically, is your event canceled or is it rescheduled? And if it's canceled, then it comes down to you basically thinking, okay, I need to substitute some sort of goal here, or I need to look at why I'm doing this. So for me, I'm very much like I'm committed to the process, and I like the process of getting faster every year and just making sure that I follow a good trajectory every year, and I try to be as compliant as possible. So for me, I'm okay. That's my motivation, is the training in itself. And I'm okay with building up, even if that event has been canceled. I'm okay with building up toward that. But if that doesn't motivate you and you need to find something else, then it comes down to what you're going to do to change those plans. And it really comes down to two things for me. So number one, and this is a gigantic asterisk, huge disclaimer. Okay, so a double disclaimer. I won't even read this fast like in the commercials. I will just say this slowly. Number one, if you can ride outside legally, and also if it's the socially responsible thing to do. And number two, if you can do this safely and without putting yourself at any increased risk so that you may stress the healthcare system more or put yourself in a compromised position. If those boxes are checked, I think a great way to do it is to set some sort of alternative goal. Like a lot of us, if we're training for Leadville and we come across the situation that Leadville is indeed canceled, you've been doing a lot of sustained training, like a lot of really long stuff. Go find that KOM, assuming that it's safe, assuming it's socially responsible to ride, all those things. Go find that KOM that's long, or go find that climb that's really long and go see if you can PR that thing or that long loop. Use the fitness you have and come up with something fun as a way to be able to, challenge yourself in one regard. Whether that's creating something like, Eldon's done something crazy called the 100 miles to nowhere, and he made a 5-hour trainer ride before. Whatever it is, don't just, completely let it fizzle and say, well, nobody else is providing any source of motivation for me, so I will stop entirely. And in my mind, all of us listening to this are probably the sort of folks that are capable of saying, look, I know that Leadville may not happen. If it doesn't happen, I'm still going to insert something to keep me motivated. And then finally, on the other side of it, though, let's just say it's rescheduled, right? And if something is rescheduled, Leadville would be pretty tricky, I feel like, to reschedule it later in the year, just because weather's getting really touchy at that point, even for Leadville.
Yeah, and daylight.
And daylight. But let's say it is rescheduled. Then in that case, something that we have with TrainerRoad in particular, if you use it, is Plan Builder. It's an amazing tool where you basically just select your goal event and then you tell them how much you want to train and when, and then it builds a plan dynamically for you and it adjusts all of the different races you have and all that stuff. So you can just use Plan Builder and you can just delete your current plan and then say, this is the new plan. Leadville is at this date, and it'll build it out for you. So
yeah,
that's
unsolicited plug here from me. I basically live my life according to Plan Builder.
It's amazing.
I love that tool. So, and anyway, go ahead.
I know this is a bit lengthy here, but I just want to cover a couple other edge cases. A lot of people might get to the point where they change their goal or they reach whenever their event is, and then that event doesn't happen. If that's the case, hopefully not. But if that's the case, I see a lot of people that have already gone through this, that they've had Ironman events or any other races that are coming up right around this timeline. And they go, yeah, but now I have to restart at base and I feel like I'm starting all over again. And this is something that us cyclists, if we can have this perspective, we will be much better off. If you have gone through a full training progression, you've gotten fitter and faster. And chances are your FTP is raised as well. So when you're cutting back down to base, when you're going back to the beginning, you're doing so at a higher level. And that cumulative load that you end up adding on, but at a higher level like that, that's the exact intention of structured training. And that's what pros do every year. That's what amateurs do every year that are really going for things and follow structured training. So if you do, and I'm saying this in air quotes here, I know we can't see this, but in air quotes, if you do start over, you're not really starting over. You're really just elevating yourself to a new level. So it's, and maybe this is a good time for you to focus on something that's crazy. If you're focusing on Leadville and you've always been bad at really short and hard stuff, and let's say Leadville, heaven forbid, gets canceled, maybe do the crit plan, something crazy. Just,
try something new.
Yeah. And it'll be a totally new experience and there's zero consequence, because you don't have your big event that you're prepping for. So it's kind of liberating in some regards. So in other words, don't stress. There are options that you can do.
Yeah, Fatty, the great unknown can be so unnerving, especially for us Leadvillers who like to put some level of certainty into a race with so many variables. But like Jonathan said, Fatty, fitness is fitness. And if you don't get to use it in this year's Leadville Trail 100, look for other opportunities.
Yep, you got to forge ahead, control what you can, and just sort of let the rest happen. Speaking of controllables, last show, you and I were talking about bar width and how much we love the control and versatility we get from the Envy M5 bar. Well, we neglected a crucial part that connects your bars to the rest of the bike, and that is the stem. And the mountain bike stem is one of Envy's new components.
Yeah, before the mountain stem came along, Envy XC riders would simply use the Envy Road stem. And you still can and should if you need a stem length 90 millimeters or longer. But for everyone else, the M6 should be what you are installing. It is a trail-worthy stem and comes in lengths from 35 to 85 millimeters. Remember, it's the M6 stem for both the M5 and M6 bars. The M7 stem is for bars with larger clamp diameters.
Yeah, I am actually right now in the process of building my 2020 Niner Air 9 RDO single speed with an 85 millimeter M6 stem along with an M6 bar. And I am really looking forward to talking about how I like that, what I think about it in the near future. You can learn more about all of Envy's wheels and components, many of which seem like they were built with the Leadville 100 in mind, but which can also handle anything else you throw at them from any terrain at Envy, that's ENVE.com.
Okay, back to Jonathan Lee now and how we can achieve our goals even while riding nowhere. Jonathan, the coronavirus equations really forced the whole indoor training reason for a lot of people, for a lot of us, myself included. I have an indoor, I have a wall kicker now, partly because of the situation we're in. And this whole kind of movement that's going on right now, we're being forced indoors or we're riding indoors a lot, got me thinking about 2016 and Paris-Roubaix champ Matthew Hayman. He's kind of the poster boy for turning trainer sessions into a huge win. He broke his arm 6 weeks prior to the Queen of the Classics. He had great fitness at the time of his injury, so his goal was just to keep as much fitness as possible by April. He had a lot of luck on the day of Paris-Roubaix. He made the break, and riders behind him made a lot of mistakes, but in the end, he was the Roubaix champ.
Bowden is trying to challenge, but it's Matthew Hayman. It's an early birthday present. Hayman holding on.
Matthew
Hayman wins.
Hayman's trainer rides were 2-a-days, 90 minutes each, with 2 days on and 1 day off. It's proof, of course, that fitness peak can be maintained indoors. But the question is, if you are expecting the race to go on as planned, the Leadville race this year, and a lot of our folks, a lot of our listeners are in this boat, can we effectively build base and fitness on indoor trainers?
Oh, yeah. He's a great example. Another example is Bradley Wiggins. If you look at My Time, his book that he wrote, also A Year in Yellow, the documentary, which I would very much recommend. Very motivating stuff. When he was coming back from an injury, and even just that year before he won, I believe it was the 2012 or 2013 Tour de France. I can't remember the exact year, but he did a huge amount of trainer sessions, and he would just be out there. And it wasn't like he was in there for 6 hours. He was in there for the allotted time that he needed to get the work done that he needed to. And so to answer your question directly, 100%. And I actually think it's a better way to do it, especially for Leadville. I thought about this a lot when I was, you have a lot of time to think about things when you're going up Columbine. So, and I thought about this very thing when I was going up Columbine. But so taking a step back, first of all, when we did a blog post on this recently about the point of structured interval training is to work specific energy systems. And what we're really talking about is at a specific intensity level, and this is relative to each person, at a specific intensity level, specific changes happen in your body. And if you can keep a person at that intensity level for a specific amount of time, you can get even more specificity, right? But the tricky thing a lot of the time is to add up and to spend, 36 minutes at your VO2 max all at the same time. That doesn't really happen. Anybody that's done a VO2 max interval knows that 36 minutes at that, it sounds like the worst thing one could endure. But if you break it up into a 90-minute session, you'd be surprised how much time you could spend there. You might even end up spending somewhere around 20 minutes, maybe even north of that. So that's why interval training is so effective, is because you can get very specific outcomes in very little time, and you can do it in a strategic manner. But the interesting thing is when we're talking about those energy systems and the energy systems you use on race day, Leadville's a long day. Most of us are looking at somewhere in between 8 and 12 hours at Leadville. And if that's the amount of time that you spend, you're largely using the same energy systems that you use, surprisingly, when you only do like a 30-minute effort, an hour-long effort, which is crazy. But when we're talking about riding at sweet spot and riding around there. So we just did this article, and I'll actually try to bring this up because it was fantastic. Jesse, one of our copywriters, brought it up, and it's basically how to create a pacing plan for your goal event. And I'll make sure if you just go to blog.trainerroad.com, you'll be able to find it on there. But we break down basically how, when you have a 7-hour race and you know that it's going to take you roughly 7 hours, how to know to pace that, basically. And it's amazing when you look at this, you realize, hey, you know what? This is actually what I can do for an hour. I can stretch out and I can do for 2 to 3 hours. What I can do for somewhere around 3 hours, I can do for 12 hours. It really ramps up. So when we're talking about 90-minute workouts, 100%. In fact, Nate, our CEO, the longest workout he did, I think, was like 2 hours on the trainer leading into Leadville. And he probably would have broke 8 hours if he didn't just completely implode with getting too hot. So when it comes to these shorter workouts like that, like you said, Michael, like 90-minute workouts like Matthew Heyman was doing, and doing a 2-a-day structure, by the way, is really great, especially for a lot of us now. We don't have commute time, right? So we can probably fit something like that in. But just looking at it, if you're looking at like your pacing strategy and target power and how that relates basically to the energy systems, roughly, if you're looking at riding from 1.5 to 2.5 hours, you can ride at what we basically 90% of your threshold. That's what you can manage there. But then if you look at 80% of your threshold, you can ride there for 2.5 to 4.5 hours. And then if you're looking at 70% of your threshold, that's 4.5 hours all the way up to 16 hours or more. So if you look at that, the sort of energy systems that you're working, even when you're riding at 90% of your threshold, it's largely aerobic in terms of the demand. And you're going to be using those same energy systems basically the whole day. So it's a good way to get more out of less. And the final point is, think about this. People that ride the indoor trainer and do 2-hour workouts, I think, are more prepared for Columbine than those that do 10-hour workouts outside. And the reason for that is because you can't stop pedaling going up Columbine. It doesn't happen. It's just very long. And that taxes your muscle fibers in a very unique way, just pedaling nonstop for over 2 hours or 2 hours. It's really difficult to do. In fact, most people, if you look at any ride that you've done, it's extremely rare that you've ever pedaled nonstop for an hour. We almost always have these small micro breaks, and even a break of just a couple seconds really does change what's going on in our body, and it allows us to get on top of things. So that constant 90 minutes to 2 hours even, or just 1 hour, constant pedaling, 0 breaks, especially when you're talking about layering structured training on top of it, goes a huge way to prepping you for Leadville. I think more people should do it.
Is there a way to calculate, or is there an algorithm or a calculation that says, an hour on the trainer is equal to so many on the road? Is that a stat or a data point worth even talking about?
Yeah, it's certainly talking about. A lot of people throw around that it's basically like 1.5. I hear a lot of the time, but there's no way for us to truly quantify that, really, because effectively, assuming that you have a perfectly smooth road outside and 0 interruptions, you can do the same exact work, right? There's nothing special there, and as long as you're adequately cooled and motivated inside, then you can probably do that work. But I would say for most of us, especially if we're mountain bikers, if you look at separating it by time spent at a specific intensity, you will hit that. I think that you'll have definitely a massive increase in your likelihood to be able to hit those marks with your workouts if you go inside. It's just basically stacking the deck in your favor is the way that I see it.
Yeah. And so with this year and the virus being something that we all have to be concerned about, it is a good opportunity, a forced good opportunity, I'll say, for us to learn how to take advantage of this challenge to become perhaps a stronger rider in some new ways. So I think that's great. Now, the one thing that I want to get to that is honestly, you hear me kind of stuttering around it, is because I feel like I don't want to jinx anyone. But what if you get sick? Okay, you're just going to spit it out. What if you get sick? It's going to set you back, right? What is the latest you would say you need to be, free and clear and healthy again to resume training and say, yes, I'm still going to race in 2020? Or would you say, if you get sick today or you're already sick right now, you need to pull the plug for this year and say, I'm going to defer?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, number 1, talk to your doctor. Number 2, talk to your doctor. Yep. And probably number 3 as well. But with that said, I think that all of us in this situation, and we've had, employees and stuff like that right now who have been like, feel like I've got something. And I'm definitely in favor of erring on the side of caution. If you feel like you're getting sick or you are sick at this point, it's probably not a smart thing to just, continue to push through. I think that it's the smart thing to prioritize health. I think that that's something for sure. Now, but in terms of the exact timeline of when to return, that's impressively variable. There are, we don't have any hard data on this, but just from the general things that we see from a lot of different people, depending on the illness, not speaking about coronavirus in particular, of course, but depending on the illness, some people can come back remarkably fast, and some people, for others, can't. There's the whole thing where it's like, if it's below the chest, then or above the chest, then you're fine, and then below the chest, that take some time off. I don't prescribe to such things like that. I think that it's something where you have to take your time and ease in, and that's the one absolute constant. When you are questioning, hey, maybe I can get back into it, I would give yourself an extra day at least of basically acting like this is the first day you're treating this sickness. So really double down and make sure that you recover well. And then when you come back into things, come back slowly. Do not just rush into things. Not only will it be difficult for you to hit your numbers, but it can be really discouraging and also just put you further back. So take your time. No need to rush.
Right. And if the illness or whatever forces you to defer to 2021, I mean, how do we keep... It's easy to just go, well, it's a year and a half away. What do I have to worry about? But would it be prudent or okay to start planning now? And how would you lay out a plan like that where your goal is way off in the future?
Yeah. So I get excited about that. So I look at things always with a longer term perspective. And I know that if I just focus on making sure I do my workouts, it's that simple. So clearing out the things in my life every day so I can be consistent. I know that if I do that year over year, I'm going to get very fast, right? For myself, right? I'll get faster and faster. Our bodies need these long-term strategies in place to be able to build fitness. In one season, you can only do so much because the way training works is that you stress the system, and with training, you dose it with training, and it's basically more stress than it's used to handling. And then you have to offset it with recovery. And then you continue and just rinse and repeat. And then it gets to a point where you've been doing that long enough that your body needs a little bit more of a break. And this is basic periodization, right? And when it needs a bit more of a break, that's when we take time off after Leadville, right? And it really is important to give yourself a little bit of time off. Time away from structure, psychologically speaking, can be really helpful. But physically speaking, your body needs a little bit. And yep, You'll drop down a little bit every year when you do that, but that's okay. That's all part of the process because you have elevated your body's fitness levels. You've changed your body fundamentally. And going into the next year, when you start adding on more training stress, you're at an elevated level. So you'll just get faster. So if you are deferred all the way into 2021, let's say that's the scenario that somebody has, you could use Plan Builder and you could lay it out so that your race goes all the way out to that point. And when you do that, what Plan Builder will do is trend your fitness gradually. And it will either bring you to the point where if you have a ton of time, a lot of the time it will bring you to peak fitness and reset you, bring you to peak fitness and continue to do that. Or depending on, and this is based on all the data that we've gathered to put into basically this model that controls this. If it's less time, it'll find the best way to do it and it'll probably change that approach. But yeah, so the point is, if you are deferred, then this is just an opportunity for you to take a long-term perspective and really make sure that it's a great year. And this is probably for everybody listening to this, even if you don't get deferred and then Leadville still happens this year and next year and everything continues as normal. We should all have that long-term perspective. It puts a lot less pressure on us, and we're probably a little too eager to put pressure on ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's part of why we love racing, right? It gives us a reason to and a target for this pressure to sort of have a finish line, literally and metaphorically. It is interesting that between the deferral options that already existed and the COVID-19 threat sort of looming over us, that there are options to defer to 2021 for a lot of people. It might not be a bad idea to think, I'm going to be safe for 2020 and come out with guns blazing in 2021 and have the possibility of getting the fastest time I've ever done or being that much faster. You can use this to your benefit in a way.
Yep. Yeah, and if anything, you'll probably end up reaching peak fitness around Leadville, something like that, if you say that 2021 is the main goal. And then you'll just end up repeating and getting faster for that. But the great thing is you may not have all that stress from Leadville because, man, all of us on here, we know sometimes we can go pretty deep on that day and boy, does it punish you. So that sort of thing can really add up. So yeah, that's what I would say is that it's a good thing. A long-term perspective is something that all of us should have. This isn't our job. This is something that we all do because we love riding, right? And so it's definitely helpful.
Jonathan, I want to get back to the whole indoor versus outdoor thing because obviously I'm coming from a perspective of somebody who did not train a lot indoors. So, I'm still convincing myself that this is the way. And I think a lot of people might be in my boat with me here. In particular, I want to talk about riding on the dirt versus riding on an indoor trainer. In the dirt, you get those choppy, really forceful power moves. Nothing seems to be smooth all the time. Whereas in the trainer, the action is smoother. The output feels smoother. Can you effectively get your legs ready for the dirt on an indoor trainer? Is a watt just a watt just a watt? In other words?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's two parts to it. I'll use a metaphor to explain the first part. So basically, if you look at it, a race, the elevation and the terrain that you are riding on, and just look at your power graph from a mountain bike race. And you'll notice that in many cases, it's much more, the power bursts are much more frequent. They're sharp, hard bursts, and they're repeated. So you put them out repeatedly. Leadville is unique in the regard that there is not a lot of time where this happens. When you're passing people up on top of Columbine, yes, this happens. And it's probably the worst time ever to make that happen, by the way. But just is what it is. But if you look at it, it's just repeated hard efforts. So when we're looking at repeated hard efforts, we're looking at basically your anaerobic work capacity when we're talking about really high intensity. We're also talking about your aerobic capacity, which is basically your ability to, or in this case, we can talk about it in the context of your ability to recover between efforts so that you can do another hard effort, go up that short little punch or whatever it may be. And then if you look at the whole thing, though, it's all still related to your threshold. Let's just say to go up a bump, like a steep little section on a trail, that you have to put out 500 watts. And that 500 watts, if your threshold is 100 watts, or if your threshold is 300 watts, that 500 is going to feel very different, right? Because it's a different percentage of your threshold. So to answer your question directly, Absolutely. Indoor training, if anything, I think is better because mountain bikers have to deal with this crazy sporadic structure all the time, and they need to do structured training to build that sort of fitness that you need to be able to deal with repeated hard efforts. So that's like in our cross-country marathon plan, it's a ton of sustained work, but also with a good amount of spiky stuff in there too. Spiky in terms of like the profile to help you out with it. Mm-hmm. But taking a step back, think about this. Like, what if basically like CrossFit folks, or if you wanted to get strong basically in the gym and you wanted to look awesome, right? Like none of us cyclists do. Actually look like a strong upper body, right? If you want to do that, it would seem crazy to tell somebody like, yeah, just go out into a field and find some heavy rocks and flip them over and then just keep walking down that trail and find some more heavy stuff and flip it over. And then you'll be fit. It would seem crazy for us to say that because we all accept that the best way to go about that is to do structure. And we have this whole infrastructure around gyms and everything based off of a 1 rep max. And then that's how you end up structuring everything so that you can control a gradual increase and get stronger. So yeah, absolutely. It's basically the trainer is the best way to do structure. And since it's the best way to do structure, it's the best way to build specific outcomes in terms of your fitness. Mm-hmm. But the other side of things that's really interesting that you pointed out is how it's, mountain biking, a lot of the time we don't go very fast when we're putting out high power, right? But a lot of these smart trainers have really heavy flywheels. And as a result, and a lot of the time we're on a road bike and we'll just put that thing in our biggest chain ring up front and then we'll put it in the littlest cog in the back and we get that trainer rolling super easy. And we're like, man, we like this because if you've ever tried doing the same power, but you're down on your little ring and your biggest cog, it feels very different. And a lot of that comes down to inertia. And we experience the same thing when we're riding outside. So I would recommend that all of us mountain bikers look at what gear we're in and try to think of the gears that you're going to be in when you're climbing the critical climbs there at Leadville. And honestly, a lot of those times are when you're geared all the way down. So I'd recommend that mountain bikers do their training on a smart trainer in a lower gear. A watt is still a watt in terms of what you're producing, but your body does produce it in a slightly different manner when we're talking about the muscular recruitment patterns and the neuromuscular firing patterns that are going on to basically fire muscles and stress muscles independently at different parts of the pedal stroke. When you have more inertia, there's less constant pressure, or I should say the pressure is more oblonged if you were to graph it across the pedal stroke. Whereas if you have less inertia and you basically have to press against those pedals at all times to even move forward, that tends to be more constant and more even. So when you train in a lower gear on the smart trainer, it can absolutely help. It's a marginal gain though. If you for some reason can't do that, you're still going to be getting fitter. You're still going to be really well prepared. But if you want to go the extra mile, I would try to emulate the gear.
I think you just answered my next question, but I want to be sure here. So 1x on a trainer, a lot of some mountain bikers now are riding 1x, in other words, 1x12, 1x11 setups. We're cool there then, right? Riding 1x on our trainers, we're getting the correct metrics once our workouts are down? Okay.
Yep, 100%. So the one thing that you'll see with your workouts a lot of the time when you upload it to Strava is that the power is wacky. Not the power, but you'll see the speed is wacky and the distance. And you'll see like some people when they train, you'll have both done the same workout, but one person will have done 12 miles while another person would have done, 32. And once again, that's because smart trainers are just trying to estimate what your speed is. And this is really important. When you're riding indoors, speed is irrelevant because of the fact that you just simply, you're not moving through any sort of space, right? You're stuck and you're still. So since you're still, I think that it's really important that you basically, any number that you're getting out of that is basically an extrapolation. Because even if you have like a speed sensor that's measuring on your bike, who's to say that spinning your wheel to go 20 miles an hour outside is the same as spinning that wheel on the trainer to go 20 miles an hour? The trainer is just trying its best to estimate what that would be, but it's not guaranteed to be accurate. So I would just disregard speed and distance when you're training inside, but power's king regardless anyway. So power's the way to go.
Really great to hear some reassurance that even though we may be in for a spring of missing our long dirt climbs outdoors, we can simulate that, if not replicate it, indoors.
Yeah, one thing we should address, Hottie, since we're sending so many people into their indoor trainers, is how to handle hydration and nutrition while riding indoors. And for advice on that, we want to point our listeners to The Feed. The staff at The Feed has outlined some trainer-specific rules to ride by. Here are the highlights. First, you have to hydrate twice as much as you would outside. Second, boost your concentration and keep your glycogen topped off so you can keep your longer indoor workouts. 3, replace your lost sunlight with vitamin D. And then fourth and finally, try to replicate your outdoor ride out routine with a coffee stop.
Yeah, we always stop for coffee when we're riding outdoors. Why not do it indoors? Just set a cup of coffee. I do this, in fact, on my little trainer sessions now. I have a little mug of coffee sitting right next to my indoor trainer, and I can stop and have a little coffee break if I want to. The Feed is back as our sponsor for season 3, and they have all the stuff Fatty just mentioned, including coffee. The code is the same, thefeed.com/Leadville, but the deal has changed. Instead of the assembled boxes, just pick what you want, whatever you want, and get that 15% discount. Again, thefeed.com/Leadville, and sign up for a 15% discount. Now, back to Jonathan Lee of TrainerRoad and how to stay motivated while riding in place.
Out of curiosity, Jonathan, as someone who really knows and loves indoor workouts, what is your personal setup for riding indoors?
Yeah, so I have 2. I'm spoiled rotten with this sort of thing, as you can assume. I have I could use all the different trainers that I want, which is really definitely a luxury. But so primarily what I do is I use the Elite Nero Smart Rollers. So I hadn't ridden rollers until maybe 3 years ago. And I had done a ton of time on trainers, obviously. And we actually, because if you start using TrainerRoad and don't have a power meter and don't have a smart trainer, you can still use it with a speed sensor and our virtual power system. So basically what we do is we have to graph out what speed or what power it takes to spin a given trainer at a given speed. And we have machines to do that. Then we verify that also with individuals, and just to make sure that it's close. And this is an estimation of power, but it still works. And at one point we needed to do it for rollers. And I remember everyone looking around the office like, well, I'm not going to verify that because nobody wanted to ride the rollers. And I was like, yeah, I'll try it. And I did the same thing that all of you guys did. I should have put it up on YouTube and you guys all laugh at me, but falling off, bumping into the wall, doing all that stuff. But then I realized the fact that if I fall off the rollers in terms of going forward or backward, my wheels will just stop. I won't Looney Tunes my way through a wall. It'll be fine. And I began to love them, and I absolutely love them, and I do all my workouts on them. And Elite now has some erg rollers that are pretty darn good. So I use those, or I use the Elite Quick Motion rollers, which those ones just are basically the same thing, but no smart control. So I just shift gears and adjust my cadence to hit my power targets with that. And those are my 2 setups that I love. They're my favorite ones. Around the office, though, in particular, the Saurus H3 seems to be the really popular one these days. So
very nice. And how about for what you are watching or listening to, or otherwise occupying yourself while you're going through workouts? You a Netflix guy? You just listen to music, podcast, audiobooks? What is it?
Yeah, this is probably going to date this episode, but Tiger King. Just joking.
Of course.
But kind of not joking. But yeah, so I try to pair it with my intensity. If it's like low intensity, that's when I can bring in the sort of entertainment where it's like, that's where we're talking about movies like Tiger King or something like that, a show like that. As the intensity increases, I might just shift over to just watching a bike race. Mm-hmm. And if I'm watching a bike race, chances are I probably have some sort of music going on or something. But when the intensity gets really high, when we're talking like, basically threshold and above, then I just like music, and it's motivational music. And we were actually just talking about this before recording. I'm not even going to share what I listen to because music, man, you can judge a person a lot by their music.
Come on, share.
Come on.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I'll share. Yeah. So one of my regular ones to keep it fresh all the time is A State of Trance. If you listen to that, basically it's like a radio show that you can listen to, but it's on SoundCloud or Spotify or anything else. Or any sort of electronic music usually keeps me going pretty well, or metal, one of the two. Those 2 things keep me going. But also, it's fair saying, if you listen to Vivaldi, I don't know, that's totally okay. And no one should judge you for your training playlist.
Amen.
It's whatever gets us through.
Yeah, the Four Seasons, Vivaldi. Come on, let's go. I love that stuff.
That's it. That's it. Whatever you need to listen to. But lately, honestly, it's just been group workouts. And I do put my music to half level, but our new feature that we have, group workouts, is awesome. I've been able to train with my friends that I haven't seen in a really long time that live on the other side of the country or different continents. And it's just so much fun, so entertaining, and so motivating. So that's honestly kind of taken over a lot of the entertainment for me. I just have some music playing in the background, and then I just get to video chat with and see my friends all through TrainerRoad. And it's so much fun. It's an absolute blast.
Tell us a little bit more about the group workouts, as well as I think the backstory behind that new feature, or it should be called a new suite of features that has come out for TrainerRoad.
Yeah, so we got a proof of concept about 6 months ago, I guess now. But this has been a thing that we have wanted to do since darn near day one of TrainerRoad. Our CEO has wanted to do this. So, but we just built up like a proof of concept like 6 months ago, and full of bugs, all that stuff. It was just a proof of concept, and we were planning on putting it into place this fall, and starting to work on it and everything around this time. But then, once COVID hit, we just I kept seeing so many people sending in questions and everything else saying not only is my event canceled, but I can't even ride with the people I normally ride with. What do I do to stay motivated? So we all hands sprint, worked through the weekends, a lot of really long nights, the entire company, and they did a heck of a job. And we got this feature out, and it basically allows you to ride with 4 of your friends, so 5 people at once, and that'll increase as time goes on. We'll get more and more people into these, but you start a ride, you share a code with your friends, and then they can join that ride, and then you share voice and video. You can chat with each other, see each other, and you're all synced up at the same time in the same workout, which is a lot of fun. So commiseration, but also support. And for us, it all works toward making people faster, because we found that it increases workout compliance substantially. And if you're following your workouts and doing them to the T, you're getting faster. And for us, it's all about getting faster together and not basically making it a success when everybody else loses. So there's online competition and plenty of other things where you're only successful if you beat everybody else and everybody else loses. But that isn't the focus with this. The focus with this is to get you training with the people that you want to train with and support each other, and everybody hits their goals and everybody gets faster. And that's really what we're going for. And it's just hugely motivating. So it was a 9-day push by us to work really hard to get this thing out. And it's been probably the most successful launch we've ever had. And people are absolutely loving it. So at some point, we really want to get to the point where we can have basically connect people that are racing Leadville and training for Leadville. And then you can train with different groups. More than likely, a lot of you are going to be following the same training plan and probably going to be doing the same workouts on the same day. And it'd be super cool, I think, to be able to connect with other people from around the world that are racing Leadville and train with them for months leading up until the big day. It'd just be pretty cool to then see them on that day and train with those folks. So that's coming, and that's certainly something we want to build.
Yeah, this is a big deal, especially around my parts, Fatty, the fact that people have kind of lost contact with each other. I mean, I follow a lot of our Leadville listeners and other Leadville racers online, and a lot of them do train alone, and they get very effective training alone. But for many people, the loss of social contact that they get through cycling is a biggie, and they're pretty depressed about it. And yeah, on other programs, you might be able to do meetup rides and stuff like that. But I think the big deal here with TrainerRoad, what they've done is actually not so much the video portion, but that audio portion where you can talk back and forth to the people you're kind of missing at this point due to the fact that we're all practicing social distancing. I want to dial in on some more TrainerRoad specific stuff, Jonathan. First of all, electronic shifting. Can TR detect that? Does it matter? Does it help at all as far as the data we're getting from our workouts?
Yeah, so not at all. We don't need to. I think electronic shifting is. I have it on my bikes. Yeah, it's super cool. But if I'm honest, it doesn't shift any different. You know, the Eagle axis that I have doesn't shift any different than the Eagle that I had before that was mechanical. And it shouldn't change anything in terms of how you're training. If you don't have a smart trainer and you're training inside with TrainerRoad, because it's also worth saying that you can do all your workouts outside now. You can, whatever workout you have from your calendar, you just push it to your Garmin head unit or your Wahoo head unit, and you can do it outside. But whatever you're doing inside, you can either shift to hit your targets and train outside of erg mode, which is that electronic resistance control mode. Or you can, just keep it in that one gear, keep erg mode on. But yeah, it doesn't affect things. The only spot where it kind of gets close to that is when we're talking about what gear you're in and the inertia, like we talked earlier. But yeah, shifting, no big deal there. So,
how about the multi-sport athlete? I'm kind of one of those. I do some runs once in a while. Does TrainerRoad take into account other activities when determining an athlete's stress score? How does it adjust workouts? How does it adjust your cycling workouts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically in your calendar, you can plug in recurring workouts. That'll basically be like a run, or you can make it yoga or anything else like that. And when you plug those in, you can factor in the TSS. Basically, you can estimate what that sort of stress is like. Now, it's important to remember that all of this operates, and basically all of structured training operates on a metric called TSS, which is your training stress score. And that training stress score comes from power. So you need a power meter to be able to accurately figure out what that is. So anything outside of power, it's just an estimation, but that does not mean that it isn't useful. Like I know, for example, what a day that, because I've trained enough with it, I know what a 250 TSS day feels like. It's a big day and it's a hard day. And I also know what a 100 TSS day feels like. So it's with time, you get to the point where you can estimate, okay, that run is probably going to be a 65 TSS day, something like that. But we did build in a calculator for you to be able to estimate what that TSS would be for the different riding activities if you don't have a power meter. And you can do that. So once you have all those things estimated on your calendar, you get an idea of okay, so I followed my training plan and it gave me, let's just say 500 TSS that week. And then I also was running and I ran with 200 TSS that week is what I added up. And I feel extremely fatigued. So that's a good way for you to be able to adjust it. We definitely are looking at stuff like that for the future and adjusting that in different ways. So I probably, if Nate was here, he'd probably be ripping my microphone cord out. So I'll stop at that point. But yeah, so that's how you can add those activities on and then adjust for them. It's a bit manual right now, but totally possible.
All right. Jonathan, such good info. Really appreciate you doing this. Let's have you on again really, really soon, because I understand that you have some stories to tell that you haven't told yet and some advice to give that you haven't given yet based on your Leadville in 2019.
Absolutely. It'll be fun.
We can compare poop stories.
It's sad that we both have those, but yes, we can.
Jonathan Lee.
Luckily, I don't.
Good to hear. If you want, you can call in sick for that episode, Michael. I totally understand.
Jonathan of TrainerRoad. Boy, it is great talking with you. Thanks so much for your info, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Likewise. Chat soon.
Fatty, in the past, we have put a rather bright and significant spotlight on Shimano products, and their components deserve all the praise that we have given them.
Yeah.
But this time, we want to talk about something other than shifters, derailleurs, and brake systems.
Yeah, the other day, Hottie and I learned about a new commitment by Shimano to become the founding sponsor of IMBA's Dig In project, and that's to fund the creation of new mountain bike trail projects. In addition to financially supporting IMBA projects, Shimano is going to use its influence to connect national and local fundraising and get more trail projects going.
And to kick off the Dig In project, Shimano produced a video that features the people doing the hard work that is called trail building.
Very seldom that you can actually just hop on your bike and ride down something purely natural. But with a shovel and a rake, suddenly, places you couldn't ride become rideable, right?
mountain biking and trail builders are inseparable. So I cannot imagine a world like that. It's like the Earth without oxygen.
Without trail builders, I think every rider will be hitting trees.
So for me, in my mind, trail work and owning a mountain bike kind of go hand in hand.
Be sure to check out what Shimano is doing here. It is on their website, bike.shimano.com. We're also going to have a link of the video and details and in our show notes for the episode at Leadville100podcast.com. Let's go ahead and wrap up Season 3, Episode 4 of the Leadville Podcast, presented by Floyd's of Leadville. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. Also, be sure to share it with your cycling friends. Support our sponsors. Let them know that you appreciate what they do in making this show possible.
Meanwhile, if you do have ideas for us or the show, head to the Leadville100podcast.com comment section and get in touch. That's also where you can find a link to our Slack workspace and jump into our never-ending Leadville conversation.
It never ends. So you can also follow me on Twitter. I am at Fat Cyclist. Hottie is over at Michael Houghton. And you can find us both on Facebook in the Leadville 100 MTB participants group.
Good luck in your training, indoors or out. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the starting line.